Jenna stood in front of the mirror, staring at herself. Not the version of herself she presented to the world, but the version hidden beneath layers of routine, habit, and self-doubt. For years, her life had become a loop, a cycle of bad habits she couldn't shake. It wasn't until this very moment, as she caught her own tired eyes, that she realized something had to change. The brain is like a path through a forest, she thought, echoing something she'd once read. The more you walk a path, the more it becomes second nature. But what if you could clear a new path? With a breath, she decided. Today was the day she would begin hacking her own brain, and it would start with breaking her worst habits. Jenna's first realization was simple but powerful. Bad habits are sneaky, triggered by the smallest things. Her bad habit? Mindless snacking. It was triggered every time she sat down to watch TV after work. But now, instead of falling into the trap, Jenna stood in front of the kitchen cupboard, hand halfway to a bag of chips, and asked herself, why? She didn't want the chips. She wanted to relax. That was the trick. She wasn't craving food, just comfort. Jenna decided to change the scenery. Instead of lounging in front of the TV, she grabbed a book, repositioned herself by the window, and let the sunlight flood in. The old trigger was no longer valid here. Days passed, and Jenna found herself with another challenge: laziness. Every time she wanted to start something productive, her mind made it seem impossible. But then, she remembered something simple: the 2-minute rule. She told herself, I'll just clean the desk for 2 minutes, that's it. The desk cleaning led to organizing her files, which then led to a full room refresh. It turned into 30 minutes of focused productivity. The 2-minute rule was Jenna's way to trick her brain into starting, and that was always the hardest part. She didn't have to take huge leaps. Small steps were enough. It was the morning routine that tested Jenna's patience the most. Every day, her alarm would blare and she'd hit snooze without a second thought. Sleep always won. One day, Jenna decided to rewire her routine. Instead of placing the alarm by her bed, she set it across the room, forcing her to stand and walk to turn it off. But it wasn't just moving the alarm that helped, it was what came next. She paired the act of turning off the alarm with immediately splashing cold water on her face. Her mind slowly began to associate waking up with an energizing reward, the refreshing burst of water. It wasn't a punishment anymore, it was a trigger for her day. Jenna realized that her brain was wired for rewards. Each time she fell into her bad habits, it was because they offered instant gratification. So she asked herself, what if I could hack this? She decided to create her own dopamine triggers. Every time she successfully broke a habit, whether avoiding junk food, getting up early, or sticking to a new routine, she rewarded herself with something positive: a small treat, a walk in the park, or even an episode of her favorite show. Soon, her brain began to crave the new, healthier habits. It wasn't about willpower anymore. It was about strategy. The final key came when Jenna felt herself slipping back into old patterns. That's when she reached out to a friend, explaining her journey. Together, they formed a pact to hold each other accountable. Whenever one felt like giving in to their bad habits, they had to text the other. Having someone else invested in her success gave Jenna the extra push she needed. She wasn't just doing it for herself now. She had someone cheering her on, and she was rooting for them too. Months later, Jenna looked in the mirror again. This time, she didn't see a person trapped in a cycle of bad habits. She saw someone who had taken control, someone who had reprogrammed their brain, one step at a time. Breaking a habit isn't about being perfect, she thought. It's about walking a new path every day until it becomes your nature. And just like that, Jenna realized that anyone with the right hacks could break free from the habits holding them back. As Jenna's story ends, we discover that this narrative isn't just about her. It's actually being told by her future self. The Jenna in the story was her past self, and now looking back, she's amazed at how far she's come. This realization reinforces the message. Change is possible, even when it feels impossible in the moment.